Hello everyone, and welcome to the Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. They say that children are the future, but what if they're our past too? Reincarnation, a concept that's fascinated cultures throughout the ages, suggests the possibility that individuals are reborn into new lives after death. It also raises another question. Is this the same reason that some children seem to possess an innate connection to the supernatural? Their unique ability to experience and see the paranormal in a way that eludes adults. Unfiltered perceptions mistaken for vivid imaginations. While adults might dismiss these encounters as mere flights of fantasy, there's an ever-growing body of evidence suggesting that children's minds allow them to tap into realms that remain hidden to others. Is it because they haven't fully embraced the constraints of societal norms and rationality, allowing them to exist with open hearts and open minds? Or could it be that their souls, still freshly acquainted with the spiritual realm, retain fragments of their past lives, ones that grant them access to extraordinary experiences? Whatever the reason, the presence of these children and their stories offers a glimpse into the mysteries of reincarnation, the possibility of a profound connection between our past, present, and future. So, let's get started, shall we? Last year, I was forced to camp in the forest of West Newbury, Massachusetts, as I was homeless, technically. I still am. I should add that I co-own the land I've been camping on, but it's no house. It was hard work making several trips carrying my possessions from the main road to my campsite, which was 300 yards away from the road. I also was forced to go through a swamp to get there. It was moments before sunset when I finally finished with all of the loads I needed to carry, when I happened to look to my left. About 50 yards away, I saw a male face peeking at me from behind the trees, but only for a second. The face had both a puzzled and a curious expression. I was also struck by its notable look of innocence. Anyway, when it realized I had seen it, it immediately ducked behind the tree. The entity appeared to be about 7 feet tall, impossibly slim, and slightly incandescent. At first, I thought it was a man in his early 20s. I was puzzled by the fact that someone was out in the middle of nowhere at that late of an hour. I almost shouted a greeting, but then I decided to wait for the guy to emerge from behind the tree before I did. I waited and waited, but he never did come out from behind the tree. There was no noise of footsteps in the leaves or branches either. Over the next few minutes, it finally dawned on me that the entity I had witnessed was not human. That was a difficult realization, as I had never experienced such a shocking thing before. In retrospect, the creature had not wanted to be seen. Only through sheer happenstance had I spotted it. Likely, the entity was some sort of member of the supernatural world, but your guess is as good as mine. A few weeks after the sighting, I happened to mention the incident to a woman that I know at the soup kitchen I regularly go to. She, Joyce, is a New Age type, highly tuned in with all things spiritual. She asked if the creature was tall, spindly, and bright. I replied that it was. Next, she got on her smartphone and looked up artist renditions of similar spiritual entities. She pointed to one picture and asked if that was the entity I had spotted. I said it looked very similar. She explained that what I had viewed is called a forest light being. She said that she had seen a few herself. I asked if they were harmful. She claimed they were not. She also informed me that if I tried meditating, then my vibrations might enable me to regularly see spiritual entities, especially in the woods. However, I don't know how to meditate, and honestly, I'm too lazy to learn. In addition, I'm perfectly content not seeing any more inexplicable stuff. I mean, I want to sleep peacefully in my tent at night. Indeed, the howls and yapping of the neighborhood coyotes are creepy enough. I've been living in the same forest since late October 2019, and all that time I've never seen anything unusual since sighting the light being my first evening there. Sometimes, as I sit by my campfire, I catch myself spinning my head around suddenly to see if the same light being is peeking at me again from behind a nearby tree, but it never is. Update: December 14th, 2020 now, and I'm still in that same forest. Last night, by my campfire, I shouted to the trees, "Look, you owe me an explanation. What are you? Who are you? Where did you come from? Why the hell were you peeking at me? I'd like an explanation before I die. I'm right here, okay? Show yourself." Nothing happened. Likely, it never will. My now 10-year-old sister was born after a prophetic dream by my dying great-grandmother. She saw my mother holding a pink blanket a year before my mother was pregnant, even said the calendar was on October. My sister was born October 12th. But my sister has dreams that come true. Some of you may remember a few years back, a school bus flipped and 2 kids died in the southern states of the U.S. 3 days before that happened, she woke up crying and said, "The bus crashed. 2 of the kids died, but one of them saved his friend." 3 days later, the news reported that a bus had crashed and 2 kids had died. A week later, they released the video. It clearly showed one of the kids who died grabbing his seatmate and putting his body between her and the side of the bus. When my sister was 3 and I was 18, she told me not to go to work because she had a dream that I was hit by a car. I didn't think much of it, but she got really upset, so I stayed home just to keep her calm. The bus that I'd been planning to ride was sideswiped by an SUV as it unloaded passengers at a stop. And last year, she told me she had a dream about a girl who kept hitting me and screaming that I was a monster and that she would kill me. 3 days later, a girl that I dumped for cheating on me attacked me at a Walmart. She pulled a knife and tried to stab me in the face. Those are just some of the more unnerving ones, but there are a lot of others. I don't know if this makes her a psychic or what, but it's certainly strange, and no one in our family seems to be able to explain it. "You're going to die," repeated calmly with no worry, 5 or 6 times in a few minutes. So the story. I'm rock climbing indoors on a wall with 2 auto belays. On my right is a small girl, about 5. As a courtesy, I let her begin climbing first. It's a friendly gym where patrons give positive feedback to fellow climbers. "Nice job," I say as she gets started. She's climbing open, using any holds. I begin my route's ascent and I'm focused in working out the climb. I'm maybe 15 feet off the ground when I see her small foot just ahead to the right. I wait patiently for safety and for her to climb further. "Keep going, you're doing great," I say. "You're going to die," she calmly replies. What did she just say? I question myself. I'm sure I misheard this cute little girl. I'll just let her climb a bit further and ignore her. Back to concentration, now about 22 feet up the wall. I pause again, and with no prompting, I hear her again, very clearly say from about 4.5 feet away, "You're going to die." My mind is racing. Why would this little climber have such odd things to say? Maybe best not to engage with someone who's so young and saying such odd things. I nod my head at her. We continue climbing. At about 32 feet, I realize she's slowing me down a bit as I keep waiting for her, and I should probably just pass her at the next safe opportunity. I visualize my next few moves, and before I proceed, she breaks my train of thought. "You're going to die." Okay, what is going on? Why? Why is she saying this to me? She's not being rude or obnoxious, more just matter of fact. I proceed to pass her. My brain is focused on her words and something I don't understand. As I pass her, I smile nicely and figure no reason not to ask. "Why are you saying that?" I ask her. "You're going to die. You're going to die." I can't shake it off. I climb a bit higher and prepare for the hardest move on the route that I'm climbing. A route I've climbed before. A route I set, known as Han Solo and Carbonite. I am 45 feet in the air. I go to re-chalk my hands before a move that I sometimes get, but sometimes fail and miss. I pause. One last time. Why is she saying this? I freeze. I stop breathing for a second. I realize the childlike meaning of her words. I begin to slowly and carefully climb down. I move at a consistent pace. I breathe in and out. I'm past the girl who's still going up. I continue down, watching her in case she decides to come down. I reach the ground. And it is then I walk over, white as a sheet, and get a drink of water, and catch myself looking back. And I realize the words of this little guardian angel, who realized well before I ever did. I hadn't clipped my harness into the auto belay and was free climbing up the wall with no safety equipment in place should I fall. I would have died. When my daughter was 3, she asked me if she could watch a cartoon while I was busy doing something. I turned on the TV and found a channel where an episode of Dora the Explorer was playing. I was thinking that maybe she could at least learn a little Spanish as she sat mesmerized by the electronic babysitter. After a few minutes, she asked me if she could watch Scooby-Doo instead. I asked her what was wrong with watching Dora, and she told me that the characters weren't speaking Spanish the right way. "Of course they are," I said. "Anyway, you don't know how to speak Spanish." What she said next gave me goosebumps. "I used to speak Spanish," she said. "We both did. Remember that time when I was your mommy and you were my little girl? We lived in Mexico. We had chickens in the courtyard, and my name was Maria." First of all, incredibly well-spoken. Pretty freaky stuff. What made it even more freaky, we lived in Ohio at the time, so I'm not sure how the word courtyard was even in her vocabulary. Also, at age 3, how did she realize the people in Mexico speak Spanish, or that Maria would be a common name? I never really considered the possibility of reincarnation before then. I do now. Growing up, we used to play with Ouija boards a lot, but nothing actually happened. It was just a game to us, until we were 15. That's when Helen moved to our town. She said that her old house was haunted and that she could see spirits. We didn't believe her, but we asked if she ever did seances or went ghost hunting. Of course, she said that she did all of those things, including the Ouija board. So we invited her over for a slumber party at my house. There were 4 of us in total. After my parents went to bed, we got out the board, lit some candles, and Helen did her thing. We all had a hand on the planchette while she closed her eyes and muttered beneath her breath, but we couldn't understand a word of it. This went on for a couple of minutes until the planchette suddenly began to shake. It was only for a second, but we all felt it. Though it might be simple to push one across the board, I don't know how to make it vibrate without being noticeable. The board wasn't rigged, it was mine. Once that happened, she started asking questions. First was, "Do you want to speak with us?" And the planchette moved to yes. Next she asked, "Were you alive in this century?" And the response was no. She continued to say no to each preceding century until Helen asked, "Have you ever been alive?" And it said, no. She asked for its name, and there was no answer, but a globe fell from the shelf behind us. Despite the vibrating planchette in the beginning, we still believed all of her questions and answers were fake. But how could she make the globe fall? Things only got worse from there. Helen seemed like she was getting nervous. Her voice trembled when she asked, "Are you a demon?" The planchette shot to yes, and my bedroom door swung open. It had been latched shut, and I'm an only child. Plus, even if my parents had been awake, that isn't their style. They have zero sense of humor, as you're about to see. Helen looked at us for the first time since starting and urged us not to take our hands away until she said so. Then she began telling the demon that it wasn't welcome here, and my door slammed back shut with enough force to make me and one of the other girls recoil. We both let go. It happened the instant before Helen could say goodbye. She explained that using a Ouija board is like opening an actual door to the other side, and insisted that we had to close it again. We were all so frightened we would have done anything she said, but before we could start back, we heard loud footsteps coming down the hall. My door had woken my parents, and now my dad was angry. We screamed when he entered. Waking them up had been the last thing on our mind. Needless to say, the board was taken away, and he didn't want to hear about our emergent need to close the spiritual door, not when he had to be up for work in 4 hours. At first, we were too scared to go to sleep, but over time, we convinced ourselves everything was a coincidence. All of us except for Helen, of course. I don't know what time it was when I woke up again, but it was before 4 because my dad hadn't gotten to work yet. There was a light whimpering sound coming from one of the other girls. When I looked to my right, I saw Helen, shrunken into her sleeping bag, staring into the corner with tears streaming down the sides of her face. I followed her gaze. I saw a menacing hunched-over figure standing in the shadows, only it wasn't a shadow. The mass looked like a cloud of black smoke, shaped into a crippled old man. Then, before our very eyes, it straightened up and pointed its long-nosed face upwards toward the ceiling and vanished. The activity continued after my friends left the next day, and my parents blamed me for every slammed door or broken dish. I had nightmares of demonic creatures standing around my bed, trying to crawl into my body. I begged my parents to return the Ouija board, but they said I was using it as an excuse. It was 4 weeks of misery before they finally believed me. One day we were eating dinner together in the kitchen when Mom's water glass spilled by itself. No one's hand was anywhere near it. It just toppled over. Mom pushed her seat back, grabbed a towel for the mess, but her chair wasn't jostled in the shuffle. It remained perfectly upright as she darted away. Then it began to tilt backwards, as if someone were pulling on it. We all froze as it tipped back on its front legs before being violently knocked onto its side. Mom screamed. Dad sat in confused silence, and I said, "I told you so." Mom was ready to switch sides right then, but Dad didn't fully come around until he was walking into the kitchen and felt a hand grab his leg. It even left fingerprints on his skin. That weekend, I was allowed to invite Helen back, and my parents returned the Ouija board. They also promptly confiscated it again once Helen was finished closing the door. I can't say that I cared. I'd already decided never to touch one again, and to this day, I haven't, but burned into the backyard. I didn't have nightmares anymore. There were no more strange figures. All in all, I'd say I got off easy. This Saturday, I went to a 1-year-old's birthday party with my daughter. It also happened to be my birthday. My daughter has literally just learned to walk, so I held her hand and was appropriately led by her across a huge room full of kids, toys, and food to investigate anything and everything that she could put in her mouth or stand over like some pint-sized Godzilla. As we approached a seesaw she wanted to investigate, another kid, who was probably 4 or 5, literally leapt into it and started playing, rocking back and forth. This was the conversation that proceeded. "Happy birthday. Do you remember me? We've met before." I don't know how this kid knew it was my birthday, and I certainly didn't know this kid. "Have we?" "Yes." "I don't remember. Are you sure we've met before?" "Yes, we have. Don't you remember? It was before I died." Then the child proceeded to run away. Never did get any answers. I mean, besides the kids are creepy, and I'm really hoping my daughter doesn't pull a similar stunt in her future. My wife and I were paying our respects to friends who lost their 16-year-old son named Justin in a car accident. There were about 12 people at the house, all gathered in the living room, when we all noticed a little 3-year-old girl speaking while looking up above towards the ceiling. When her mother asked her what she was doing, she said she was speaking to Justin and pointed up above the chair. At that moment, Justin's mother let out a wail and began crying and laughing at the same time. That was Justin's chair, the place where he always sat when the family gathered in the living room. The little girl had never met Justin. Her mother was in a church group with Justin's mom. The girl kept looking up at the ceiling for another 30 seconds or so, turned to Jill, Justin's mom, and told her that Justin is fine and not to worry. Unreal. Creepy, yeah, but in a good way. As a child, I recall one experience very vividly. I was about 12 years old. I lived in a 2-bedroom home with my parents and 2 sisters. One summer night, my mom was boiling a chicken while we waited for my dad to come home from work. I remember going to bed around 10 p.m., and my sisters, the 3 of us, shared a room. In the middle of the night, I started feeling very uneasy. I felt nauseous and woke up. I tried falling back asleep, rolled onto my right side. This is where the strange things occur. At first, I wanted to believe that it was just a dream, but I still question that to this day because of the real-life repercussions. In my dream, I had woken up. I'd rolled to the left side of my bed and was facing my sister's bed in the middle. Our bedroom door was closed, but I saw something coming through the door, on the ground. It was a small being, not sure if it was a sort of dwarf or alien, but it had milky, translucent skin with long, skinny arms. The thing climbed up on my sister's bed, and it sat on her chest. In my dream, I remember being wide-eyed and panicking. I screamed that it leave my sister alone. Then, the thing looked at me straight in the eyes and grabbed me by my right wrist. It told me, "Wake up if you don't want to die." I woke up and screamed my head off. I ran to my bedroom door to go to my parents' room, but when I opened the door, the house was full of thick black smoke. I started to scream and woke everyone up. My dad got all of us outside, and I was crying. I told my parents about my dream, and they were in shock. If I hadn't woken up, we would all be dead. My mom had fallen asleep and forgotten to turn off the chicken that she was boiling that night. I'm 27 years old now, but I remember this event and that thing very clearly. They're embedded into my memory. I just have no idea what it was. When I was 4 years old, my parents built their dream home on 2.5 acres of land off the beaten path. There were other houses nearby, but it was a very spacious area, mixed in with a few farmhouses. I was a very imaginative kid, and I preferred playing alone. Solitude meant that the crazy stories in my head could be as crazy as I wanted, without judgment from the others playing the game. The back acre of our yard was nothing but woods, mostly pine, and sometimes when I was feeling brave, I would play in the woods until dark, never after dark. Some adventures during the day had even ended in an unexpected sprint out of the trees. Strange whispers that sounded like someone was inches from the back of your neck. Once I even heard a scream, but never after dark. I couldn't even look out of the living room window towards the trees after dark. One night, I got caught up in building a fort in the woods. I call it a fort, but it was just boards nailed to trees, creating railings in a rectangular pattern. In my mind, it was my castle. I didn't even notice the sun going down through the trees until I heard my name being called from the direction of the house. I panicked, sweat broke my pores, and I sprinted so hard my chest began to sting. Don't look back. Don't look into the dark. I made it to the back porch and wrenched the door open. The kitchen and living room were empty. My brother was taking a bath while my dad told him stupid jokes. I got down the hall to my parents' room, my mother playing solitaire on her computer. I apologized for being out so late and that she had to call for me. She looked at me blankly, obviously confused. She didn't call for me. I went to bed unsettled that night, but fell asleep quickly after playing outside all day. I don't remember the dreams I had that night, just unease. For the first and only time in my life, I fell out of bed and onto the floor. Confused and waking up, I felt my way around, trying to understand what had happened. And what happened next is the description of the strangest moment of my life. I grabbed a pair of feet. I felt the ankles under my hands and the hair running up the legs. I looked up in a panic, yellow eyes, broken, grinning teeth, a look of pure malice, wrapped in a blanket that I slept with. A pink and brown fleece blanket I'd stolen from my grandmother. I screamed bloody murder and flailed myself across the bedroom, down the hall and into my parents' room. My dad tore into my room to see what had caused my indescribable terror. While I hid in my mother's arms, my dad searched the whole house and found nothing. I moved out of that room into my brother's the next day. When I got older, I rationalized it all away, moved back into my old room. And every now and then, I suffered incredibly violent dreams, but nothing so up close and personal. I can still see that face, but I never did see my grandmother's blanket again. There was a new girl at our school. Her name was Summer. She invited me to her sleepover birthday party, along with maybe 6 or 7 other girls. I wasn't very popular, but I did have a small group of friends. As I recall, only one of them came to the party, so most of the attendees were not close friends. Her mother picked us up in a rickety old van, all of us. Their house was old, on a huge lot, and there were 2 little outbuildings on the property, a shed and an old outhouse. We all laughed about the outhouse, since there was no reason for one to exist anymore. Sure, this was in the 70s, but indoor plumbing had been a thing for quite some time. Summer had a little sister named Autumn, who was about 3. We joked about their names. Had her mother had another child, would it be Winter? I don't remember too much about the party. I know we all ran around and played in the outbuildings, and we asked Summer about her life. She'd only been at our school for a few weeks, and she said that her mom moved around a lot, but wanted Summer to make some new friends, which is why she invited a bunch of girls that she didn't know to her house. Being 11-year-old girls, we all immediately pledged to be her very best friends. Her mom took all of us home the next day. On Monday, I didn't see Summer. I asked my friend who'd been at the sleepover if she'd seen Summer. Nope, maybe she was sick. A few days went by and no Summer. I asked one of the other girls who had been at the party if she'd seen our new friend. She looked at me in puzzlement. Summer? I don't know anyone named Summer. Okay, didn't we all just say that she was our new best friend? How fickle can you be? A few days later, I was in the car with my mom. We drove by the street where Summer lived. I said, "That's where I was last weekend." I started to point, and then it hit me. There was no house, no greenhouse, no outbuildings, nothing but a field of grass. I was trying to convince my mother that a house had stood there a week ago, and she pointed out that there was no rubble, no sign of a house. And she said there hadn't been a house in that location as far back as she could remember. Since none of the parents had dropped us off or picked us up, no one was able to verify the house's existence, and aside from my one friend, no one else acknowledged that they had been there. No one at school remembered knowing Summer. I don't know if this qualifies as paranormal, but it sure as hell wasn't normal. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me, whether it's your first time or you're a regular. Your support means the world over here. We've got brand new episodes every Friday night. Keep those eyes open long enough for those deep sleep videos. And of course, double features. Big thanks to those who shared their stories, and a huge shout out to all of our patrons, whom we appreciate so very much. Tracy S, Tamara K, Monica L, ZoeWatt, Chelle B, Donald C, The Dark Cosmos, Marion T, Rat Girl, Alisha S, Erin G, Nikki H, Mr. Revenant, Naz K, Brendon G, Paul T, Nicholas C, Lissane, Arlene F, and Adrienne. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/thedarkesthour, or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour YT. Stay spooky.